Welcome to Reels Like the First Time. I'm your host, Allison Salamoni, and this week's first time watch is the 1944 Billy Wilder directed noir classic starring Fred MacMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Edward G. Robinson. It's Double Indemnity. And I'm really excited about my guest that I have this week. Today, I have joining me is actor, writer, comedian whom you know from his work on Screen Junkies, Disney Channel, Key and Peele, and he also hosts the podcast Binge Boys. It's the one and only Hal Rudnick. Hi, Hal.
Hey, Allison, great to be here. Thank you for having me. Very excited to jump into some classic film noir and
I'm
excited to
so
speak
excited.
to you. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
This is so exciting for me. So thank you for taking the time out of your crazy busy schedule to pencil me in this little podcast with a few listeners. And I'm really excited about this because this is one of those movies that my husband is so glad it took 11 years for me to finally watch. Let me rephrase that. 11 years and starting a podcast and someone else suggesting it for me to finally watch it.
You know, I feel like there, and maybe we'll talk more about this, but there are so many classic films
Mm-hmm.
from the golden era of Hollywood, pre 1970, pre 1960, that get forgotten about or just kind of like wither on the vine when it comes to a lot of modern film discourse. So, I'm excited to, I'm so glad I revisited it before before our recording today, and
It was such a fun watch, but we'll dive into that in a
yes.
minute. Before we even get into that, I want to know more about you and kind of your history and where your love of film came from.
Glad to tell you a little bit about that. So, I was kind of forced into it as a child. My dad was a huge cinephile and really immersed himself in nostalgia, 1940s, 50s type nostalgia his whole life. He produced a concert series in the 70s and 80s called 40s in the 80s, where he brought stars from the golden era of like Hollywood and music to back to sing like later in
That's
life.
so cool.
And I don't know if you ever heard of some of the stars like Mel Torme or Patti Page, that like so stars from this era. And he was also a huge film fan, and he gave me basically an education on classic cinema growing up, and a lot of it was against my will. I wanted to go out and ride my bike, or like, watch something in color. But because you don't appreciate it as much as a kid sometimes.
Right.
But I'm glad now I appreciate it. I'm glad that he forced so many of these films upon me, because it gave me an education. And then after that, I was a film major in college, and I just love and have taken solace in movies. My joy comes from movies. And but yeah, my dad, to tell you the extent of it, he had a 16 millimeter projector in the basement, and he got some movie theater style seats, like 5 or 6 of them, and set them up in the basement with this giant projector.
Oh,
The basement
cool.
was it was this, we had this crazy cluttered basement, but we had this little theater set up, and he would get these 16 millimeter prints of classic films. It was wild. It comes
awesome.
from my dad, and I carry on the tradition.
I love that. And then, so kind of with that being said, when I invited you on and sent you the list that I was working through, or, you could have made suggestions on that list, is this movie, Double Indemnity.
Yes.
So why did you want to talk about this one?
So I love that genre of film noir. And this is a film, to be perfectly honest with you, Allison, that I had seen decades ago,
Mhm.
but I needed a refresher on it. But I knew that it was a film that was, kind of held aloft as one of the greats. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I need a rewatch. It would be nice to talk about this. Also, in looking at the list that you sent, it seemed like, back to what I was starting to talk about a little bit earlier, discourse in regards to 1940s and 50s films, it's not as common. And
Right.
I noticed that in hosting Screen Junkies, and we'd have these conversations, like we'd get into like, oh, what's the best action movie, or what's the best romantic comedy or something,
Mhm.
and people would be hard pressed to bring up films from these decades past, and they, a lot of times, they get swept under the rug. So I kind of like the opportunity of, hey, this is a straight up classic.
Yeah.
It still plays well. It's like the film is still sharp, and there's some obviously it's, from 1944, so
Right.
it's clearly an old film, but it is a tight nugget of entertainment.
It really is, and it doesn't stop. I think one of my favorite things about this is kind of like my first between this and then a couple weeks ago talking about the Maltese Falcon. This is like my first real kind of dive, I would say, into like knowing I'm watching a noir film.
Yeah,
I don't think it's something that I've ever really seeked out. It's all and to me too with Double Indemnity, it feels like a different noir film because I'm so used to noir being like this skeezy private investigator, with the femme fatale coming into the office, but like that doesn't have to be what makes it noir. And I think that was really fun with watching this movie and getting to experience it, is like doing the deep dive into, so what makes a noir film.
yeah, and you mentioned Maltese Falcon. That is absolutely the private and guest investigator
Hmm.
trope. One of the greats, Philip Marlowe, Private Eye, Humphrey
Hmm.
Bogart.
Oh,
Uh,
so good.
but yeah, a true icon. But here you flip the script a little bit. You have this insurance adjuster, played by Fred McMurray, insurance
Hmm.
salesman, and but you still have the femme fatale, of course, played
Right.
by the indomitable Barbara Stanwyck. And so you have the tropes there, but it does play a little bit differently with
Hmm.
these elements. But
Well, it's like
absolutely a femme fatale.
right at the beginning when he walks into, like, he's walking in with his, gunshot wound and all of this and back into the insurance office, and you're immediately finding out that he killed somebody, like someone's dead. So you already know who did it in a way. And I
Yeah,
love how that then plays out, like, well, here's how it all went down. And Fred McMurray with his voiceover throughout is just, I mean, chef's kiss. It's so perfect.
the film. I love that, and him walking into the office, turning on that voice recorder, that
Mhm.
the movie is off to the races.
Yeah.
Like it wastes no time. And that's one thing, I watched Maltese Falcon, not to turn this into a dual conversation here, but the Maltese Falcon is the same way. That movie, it just like it lights the fuse and it is go time,
Yeah.
and it wastes no time, and you are immersed in this story, and it's wonderful. Like oh, stuff went down, that
Yeah.
we are in the thick of it.
Right. And I think the one thing that I kept waiting for and I thought was just so well done with this one too is because you already know he's killed somebody. Like you already know that the death has happened, that it's not like a lead up in that sense, but how the twist that we're going to be coming up with it, and how they all kind of, where, you get the daughter coming in and she's now saying, pretty sure Barbara, pretty sure Phyllis killed my mom too. And then you find out she's, sleeping with the boyfriend that Lola's been hanging out with. And it just, the way that it just unravels so
Absolutely.
fast is just, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love this genre of film is like when the shit is hitting the fan, it's really hitting the fan, and it is nonstop from then onwards. Like it's go time, and I love it so much because you're like, well, what can happen next? Like, what do you like? You think we're there, and then there's just this next just layer that gets put right on top of it. It's fun. Like it's a weird word to use, I feel like, but I can't think of anything else to use or like exciting, you know?
It is exciting because there's so much on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And these characters, the back and forth, like they're in it to get, as Barbara Stanwyck and Fred McMurray said, they're in it to the end of the line. It was
Yeah.
that they said, yeah, you and me to the end of the line.
Yes.
And you knew that, like, okay, they sink or swim together.
Right.
That's it. And there's so much that, like, oh, are they out of the woods? Oh, it looks like they got out of it scot-free. And then it's like, nope, Edward G. Robinson has a feeling. Nope. The daughter reveals that Barbara Stanwyck is bad news from like
Yep.
way back. And it's funny, like Fred McMurray, blinded by a good-looking dame.
Right. And it's just this, and I love to, so like I started, of course, I go into whenever I'm doing these episodes and getting show notes together, reading through like production and everything. And as I say, it's kind of, if it's on Wikipedia, it has to be true. But the hairstyle that Barbara Stanwyck has in this is a wig, and it's a terrible wig. Um,
Oh.
and supposedly, Billy Wilder said, yeah, it's supposed, because like I guess like whoever, like when they were watching it back where people were saying how terrible it looked, he's like, yeah, because she's a phony. Like everything about her is fake, from her phony hair to her bad fragrance. Like this is what she is. And so these little, like, whether that's what it was meant to be or not, like these little things that you find out from like going back and reading through the history of these things, you're just like, oh, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it adds up, and these characters are not as sharp as they purported to be,
Mhm.
or they're not as smart as they thought they were,
Yeah.
and it comes back to bite them. And like every step of the way, like one of the nice things about this film is it engenders that feeling in you where you want to just yell at the screen and be like, "Don't do it! What are you
Right.
thinking?"
Right. Especially because they do such a good job in this script and in the way that really kind of Edward G. Robinson plays Keys, in the fact that this guy is the one who's checking the claims, and they're making it known just how thorough of a job he does. One of the greatest moments I think in this film, which will probably be, in my top 3 later down the line, is when he starts going off on with Norton and Neff in the room about like the statistics of suicide and why this couldn't have been a suicide. And it just shows you like how much this guy knows. Like
Oh, yeah.
he's going to figure you out. Like you're not going to be you're never going to be one step ahead of Keys at all. And they lay that groundwork so early on that it just it's just going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, Edward G. Robinson, he's so great, and you are waiting for him to figure it out, because when he says that, it's like, "Oh, how are they gonna fool this
Mhm.
guy? Like, when is it gonna come back and bite them? Because he's too good. He has not been fooled." And, one thing you notice, like that was a great moment you mentioned, by the way, where he really puts his boss in his place,
Yeah.
and lets him know, how the business
It's
works.
like he does it
And,
like in one breath, and it's this ramble of, oh my god. It's
like,
the most.
moments like that and throughout this film show you that it's not just a classic of the genre, but you can cherry pick so many things from this movie, Allison, where it's like, oh, these are tropes that you see all over cinema from
Mhm.
1944 when this film was made to today. Like, two characters wearing sunglasses and like pretending to be at a store but not talk to each other. Oh, but then
Mm-hmm.
act like they don't know each other. Like, how often is that employed in cinema? Or that that element of the woman who wants to have her husband knocked off for the
Right.
insurance money. Like, I feel like, whether it's Desperate Housewives or whatever, like, movie or show or
True crime
psychological film,
podcast.
true crime. Yes. Like that, like so much of the stuff that is done here, it's like, it's the definitive moment that everyone else is just imitating. Everyone else is just
Mm-hmm.
biting the style of Billy Wilder and the Double Indemnity gang.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, everything but like the shots, like, and it's that classic shot of like the Venetian blind shot where, the shadows are on their faces. It's just, it's so
Yeah,
beautiful. It's
the
so
lighting
well
is
done.
so
Oh,
is beautiful. And I live out here in Los Angeles, and the Spanish style houses in
mhm.
Los Feliz, that was like an extra little bonus gem for me, Allison.
Yeah.
Every street they mentioned, I was like, oh wow, they're going there. I used to live around the corner from some of these places. And like the Spanish, the beautiful old timey, like I'll drive by houses
Mhm.
sometimes and it's like, holy crap. Like I can picture Rudolph Valentino in
Sure.
1925 stepping out of that house to
Yeah.
get into a limousine to go to a premiere or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, so you've got these beautiful houses, and yes, so much has changed, but like the street names are all the same.
Right.
Franklin and Vermont. I used to,
Mhm.
I know exactly where that is. Like it was
Yeah.
great.
I also, what has not aged well though is like in that beginning scene where he's driving up to go check on the auto renewal. He's like, one of those Spanish style houses that was popular 10 or 15 years ago. Probably spent 30,000 on it. I'm like,
thirty
must be
thousand
nice.
dollars. Yeah, those houses are probably going to be, upwards of like 3, 4, 5 million more
Right.
nowadays. I mean,
Just a
you get up to,
bit.
yeah, you get up to 10 million for that. One thing, like I don't mean to take it to too much of like a serious or political place,
No.
but I feel like in some of in movies of this era, racial politics
Mhm.
are not always like it can be an outlier. Like you're watching the movie and it's like, oh, like one little element that I didn't even think about years ago, but now, like, as an adult, like watching this. So like there was a moment where Fred McMurray said, quote unquote, I have a colored woman who comes in and cleans my
I did one of
apartment.
the I did a quick little oof when I
Yeah,
heard that
that
line.
didn't age
Yeah.
well. And
Nope,
then,
did not.
and it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a person of color, who we like were kind of having a like talking about some films, and there's like several films. Like there's this great film that I highly recommend called Sullivan's Travels, directed
Mhm.
by a guy who's like the Coen brothers of his day, Preston Sturges. And the film, it's a lighthearted film. It's a comedy with a deep message at the end. But there's one scene in that film where like the one person of color in the movie is made to look really buffoonish. And
Mhm.
it's like you don't even realize that back in these days, it's just, even without being overtly racist, oh, it was like either a microaggression or something that was really like really off-putting. So it's just, yeah, I noticed that. And like when you say things that aged not quite well, or
Right.
there are some little elements there. But yeah, that's, when you can go back to like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago,
Mhm.
like closer to today, and there's stuff that didn't age well, either for being,
Sure.
homophobic, misogynistic. So anyway,
Absolutely. Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, there's lines that, McMurray's character spits out here when he's hitting on Phyllis that are like, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
it's not a great look for you, sir. But again, it's other than that, though, the dialogue in this is super tight. Like the scene where when
Yeah.
he first meets her, and I think I have the quotes like pulled up here somewhere, but when he first meets her and he's getting ready to leave, and she's like, oh, because he's like, oh, come back at 8:30, and he's like, why? And she's like, to talk to my husband. That's what you were interested in. He's like, oh, well, I may not, maybe I was, but may not be anymore. And they start going this like back and forth, like
That back and forth,
flirting.
like you were talking about favorite scenes that you might bring up
Mhm.
later. Like that dialogue is so crisp. And
Mhm.
Raymond Chandler, he's one of the greats when it comes to film noir and this genre. Like he he was quite the scribe.
Mhm. It's so good. So much dialogue in this movie, and I think that's kind of one of the parts about it is it's so much, but it's so tight. And that's where it just and it's so tight in the sense of like people do not normally talk like this. But in this movie, it's believable that people talk like this because it's done so well.
Absolutely. I mean, it is stylized. That's part of the thing with a film noir. It's got the detective or the people who are going after this prize, be it the Maltese Falcon or be it the
Mhm.
double indemnity insurance payout. So everybody is conniving. Everyone's potentially backstabbing, and the dialogue is befitting of that. By the way,
Mhm.
Raymond Chandler, what a master of the genre. Just real quick, I was looking at his filmography. He wrote Double Indemnity, the Bogart Bacall film noir, The Big Sleep,
Okay.
Strangers on a Train, which is a great Hitchcock. So yeah, Raymond Chandler, the screenwriter here, one of the greats.
That's awesome. Then all movies that will probably have to be on this podcast right here because I haven't seen them yet. So keep an eye on it. I might just
I,
turn this
I
into
love it.
like
I
a
love
film
it.
noir like Stan podcast. Like it's just I think it's my new aesthetic. Like I want nothing more than it's like when I for a hot minute there, I watched like a couple Paul Newman movies, and then all I
Hmm.
wanted to do was watch Paul Newman movies, but I didn't
Oh, I
because I have
mean,
this stupid podcast and figured I would wait till someone wants to talk about them. And then people are like, I want to talk about these film noir movies. And now all I want to do is watch noir films.
you know what? You've got great taste, Allison. But
I'll take it.
there, you said, like, you were touching on some of the stuff that, like, Fred McMurray might say. It was obviously, maybe a little bit demeaning or misogynistic, probably,
Hmm.
if especially if you take it like out of context, just on the face of it. But there's an overt sexiness to this
Hmm.
world and to this film, and it's like, oh, essentially with the conversations, it's like, let's skip the small talk, let's skip the foreplay, and
Yeah.
let's get down to brass tacks here, kiddo. What do we
Yeah.
got? What do
Yeah.
we got? And they are off to the races. That's what, and again, that's another thing that's really engaging. Like, this
Hmm.
movie does not mess around. That guy walks through the office door, as you were saying earlier, like with a gunshot, and he's like, I'm gonna die. Here's what happened. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah. I want to know exactly what's going on. Like I can't, it was talk about just opening scene, just some guy, he's walking up limping on like a crutch. Like that's your opening scene, right? Like that's your opening credit is this guy
Mm-hmm.
walking with a crutch up to a building. You're like, what just happened? Like you already know shit's hit the fan. Where are we going with this? And it's just off to the races. What's also interesting during my research is just like the Maltese Falcon, what's his face? Gregory Raft, I think his name is. Um, George Raft, that's what it is.
Yes.
So George Raft turned down the Maltese Falcon, Bogart's role. This is another one. And I think it's one of the last, they say it's one of the last ones he turned down in a string of movies that all became classics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad call, George Raft.
Good. Bad call.
Um, if I could, I'd also
Yeah.
like to recommend one more film for you,
Yeah.
that stars both Fred MacMurray and Humphrey Bogart that my
Ooh.
father showed me. It's The Caine Mutiny. The Caine
Okay.
Mutiny. And this is Bogart playing a little bit older, and he plays a sea captain on a naval vessel in the 1940s, 50s, who starts to lose his marbles a little bit, and they have to the crew has to stage a mutiny, and then they go on trial for it. And Bogart, oh, he's so, it's a different Bogart because he's usually
Hmm.
so in control, and
Right.
and like he's the quintessential just private detective who's going to solve the
Hmm.
crime and who's going to get the dame, etc. But here he's kind of losing his marbles, and it's a whole different Bogart, and it's MacMurray versus Bogart in this kind of courtroom battle over this mutiny at sea. It's a really great flick.
Okay, that's on the list. Absolutely, because you're giving me. I love Humphrey Bogart, which is so funny. The two Bogart, well, I should say three Bogart movies I've now seen. Casablanca is my favorite movie of all time. It always has been. It's that
What a
whole.
what a beautiful like
Oh,
layered film. Oh,
it's perfect, and it's one of those things where just kind of like with this one, they just don't talk like that anymore, right? Like
yeah.
the lines you get from him in Casablanca when Yvonne is like, "Where were you last night?" He's like, "So far back, I can't remember." "Well, where will you be tonight?" "I never planned that far ahead." I'm like, "Fuck you!" Like
Yeah,
this is
right?
so good.
Just these quips, these
Yeah,
gems.
yeah.
Um uh,
And then,
oh man.
other than the Maltese Falcon, I saw him because I was on a big Audrey Hepburn kick when I was in, like, high school, so I
Yeah.
watched him in, Sabrina.
Yes, yes.
So which
Remade
he's
years later with Harrison
Mhm.
Ford.
Yep. So, I mean, I you put Humphrey Bogart in something, and you tell me he's in it, I'm on I and now Fred MacMurray too. I'm on the
It's
I'm on the bandwagon. I'm on the train.
yeah.
Straight to the
It's
end of the
weird.
line.
Heck yeah, straight to the end of the line, kiddo. Fred MacMurray, later in his career, I feel like one of the first things I knew him from is when I was real young, I would see reruns of this sitcom he was
My
in
3
from the
sons?
1960s. Yeah, My
Yeah.
Three Sons. And he plays such an affable, likable
Mhm.
dad in that. So different from, he's a real cad in this movie.
Yeah,
Like,
and
he's no good.
he wasn't the first one to be offered the role, obviously, because George Raft turned it down. I think if I go into the Bible of Wikipedia, that is somewhat true. Um, Raft turned it down, and who else turned it down? Oh, they approached, like, Alan Ladd, James Cagney, Spencer Tracy, Gregory Peck, like,
Oh,
all of
so
these
many of
people,
the greats.
so many of the greats, and they all turned it down.
Alan
Um
Ladd was about 5'5" or so in real life, and he would have to stand on an apple box or a crate for most of his scenes opposite his leading ladies. You probably
The
remember.
first ever Tom Cruise, like that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, they've been doing it from way back. And my father loved this Alan Ladd film called Shane, which is one of the
Mhm.
great westerns of all time. And the thing about Shane, it there are themes and elements of Shane that echo in the great Wolverine movie Logan.
Uh-huh.
And when they're in a hotel room in Logan, they are actually watching Shane,
Oh, that's
and that's like a
cool.
tip of the cap. Who was it? James, the
Mangold?
director. Yeah, James Mangold. Thank you. Yeah, giving that nod to Logan, giving that nod to Shane and Logan. It's pretty
I
cool.
love when things like that happen. Like,
Uh,
it's so it's so funny. Like, the more recent one that rings for me a lot is, I don't know if you went to go see when it came out, but Steven Spielberg movie, The Fablemans.
oh yeah,
And
absolutely saw the Fablemans.
it's so funny that I went to go see that, and a few weeks prior to that, I
Yeah.
had just sat down with my dad for an audio episode for this podcast back when I was doing audio, and we had his favorite Western is the man who shot Liberty Valance. So we had just
Yes.
like finished recording that. Like we had
That's
just done
amazing.
that episode that had just come out. And then I went to go see the Fablemans. And all of a sudden I'm watching this movie on the screen as you know, the character is as he's watching it as well. And I just immediately started crying. I was like, I
Allison, that
love
must
that
have been
this is
so satisfying. Oh my
it was
goodness.
incredible. And then of course, I mean, I've spoiled on here David Lynch as John Ford, like when he
Yeah.
goes into the
Oh,
office. And like,
what a great scene. What a
yeah.
great cameo. And the way the film ended, chef's kiss, you know?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. With the horizon, right? With just that little shift. If
Yep.
the horizon's at the
Yep.
bottom of the picture, it's a boring film. It's just at the top of the picture, or like if it's at the top picture, it's boring.
Yeah,
It's at the bottom, and like they just do that quick little shift. I'm just like, oh, this is so good.
that's
Um,
great. Another thing, back to Double Indemnity. I, one of the great things about films of this era, almost, I don't know if not more so than today, but the character actors
yes.
that play all these little roles. One that jumps out at me is the guy who was on the end of the train car with Fred McMurray before he
Yeah.
jumped off. I just looked it up here. His name's Porter Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I love when they bring him into the insurance office to question him, and he just kept saying, "Listen, I'm a Medford, Oregon man.
I'm a Medford man, and a
I'm a
Medford man. We
Medford
don't do.
man.
What was it?
We
The one
don't
that
mess
is like,
around. We don't
or it's like,
lie."
yeah, it's like,
It's
well,
just so silly.
can you do this quick? He's like, I'm a Medford man. We don't do anything quick. And Keith is there going, well, I'm gonna need you to. Did he look like this? And he's like, nope. Definitely looks younger than that.
Yep.
The amount of like
Oh,
the quips that are in these movies too, they're these very serious movies, but there's these moments of like these good quips that you just like, I caught myself like giving like a good old like chuckle at real quick before it gets real serious again.
oh, absolutely. Like, and the dialogue comes fast and furious in these
Mm-hmm.
films. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people will, I think that don't have as much experience with these with classic cinema will say, "Oh, it's black and white, it's boring." Like there is nothing boring about this. It is
Mm-mm.
like it's off to the races, like we said,
Yeah.
and it
It's just
keeps
it
you
doesn't
just
slow down.
like focused.
I think, and it's so good too with like how this all the suspense building and everything that it does, and the story building for it, and getting to this point of like, they really okay, wow, he's really, and I kept kind of sitting back going, he's not really gonna help her do this, right? Like he's not like this is not going to happen. He would never like. I get it, like we do weird things for love, but and I kept thinking that leading up to it, like no, like it's not the confession in the beginning is like maybe he's like confessing because he feels like he had a part in it, but whatever. It really wasn't him. And then you're like, oh no, he's really doing it. He
Yep.
really sat in the back of the car and you hear him kill this person, which again, a lot of the stuff that this movie did was very, very in a way controversial, or like really close on the edge of like being not approved by the production code and the Hays Code that was around at the time. Like it was
Yeah.
very much it rode the line of like whether it would be approved to be released or not with the things that it was doing.
Yeah, the murder, the sexuality,
Hmm.
seemingly with this married woman, and then she's, obviously, that there's so many things that seem just like commonplace now in a film, but like, the code wanted to keep it, everything on the up and up,
Yeah.
so. Yeah, like oh my goodness, a woman potentially having an affair with two different men.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
Stop the
Or
presses.
even the fact that like they had to because this is all based off of a story, like a novella that was written in like small parts in a newspaper or magazine, and the end of the story has them committing a double suicide, which
Oh,
during that time you could not depict suicide on screen. So like they had to rewrite the ending that they were going to do. And then I'm going to bring it up here because I had messaged you about a possible alternate ending, because my husband, the Blu-ray set that he has came with like pictures of like lobby cards and movie posters, and then it had a still from the alternate ending. And so what that ended
Oh.
up being, so from what I learned was, so the ending itself was actually filmed after, so the part where they're laying there and he does the line of that whole I'll tell you why you couldn't figure it, because the guy you were looking for was too close. He was right across the desk from you. And Key says, closer than that, Walter. And then he says, I love you too. And then it moved on to, you see Walter being walked into the gas chamber in San Quentin or wherever, and Keyes is watching him inside the gas chamber. And that's originally how it ended. But there's
Wow.
no film of it at all because it got taken out. They decided, Wilder decided after he had watched it that that's not how he wanted it to end. The movie ended with those two right there, their friendship, and he felt it was a better ending over what adding that part in. So they had taken it out after it was already filmed. But there's the only thing that exists from it is this still of Fred McMurray standing in the gas chamber looking
Oh,
out.
wow.
Yeah, so like it's just
That's
like a little
fascinating.
postcard picture that I have, which I was like, oh, so that's what it is. Which
Gotcha.
then, of course, I ended up having to go down the rabbit hole with this whole,
Sure.
lost
Thank
alternate
you.
ending. Yeah,
Listen, you go the extra mile, Allison. I
I
love that.
try.
I had no idea about the history of that, and that they had done the other potential ending. So that's
Yeah,
really fascinating.
yeah.
You were talking about like how great the dialogue is, and
Mm-hmm,
like people don't talk like this in real life, so it's heightened.
mm-hmm,
Everyone is cool. Everything is that extra level of sexy. Everything
mm-hmm.
is that much more conniving, and I'm glad real life is not like this.
Oh, me too. I can never
I
keep
mean,
up.
it can be. I mean, like
Sure.
you mentioned it earlier, true crime, but um, but just getting back to like how it's the dialogue is a little crisper and sharper than the way people actually talk. I just was thinking about the last scene. Fred McMurray's trying to get to the elevator, and then he finally collapses. He's lost too
Mm-hmm.
much blood at this point. And Edward G. Robinson walks up to him and he says, so you didn't make it to the elevator? He's like, yeah, it was further than I expected, or something
Yeah,
like that. And it was just like the perfect, like he still had that little bit of sense of humor, that little bit,
right.
still make a quip, to still drop a little gem right there.
Yes. And then I loved, it's so subtle, but like throughout the movie, um, Fred McMurray is lighting the matches, which, by the way, how cool of a move is that to like flick it with your, I mean, obviously that was like the thing that you could do back then
Yeah.
with them, but
Yep.
like so cool. I'm like, wow. Oh no, that's so fun. And how he's
Makes you want to
constantly
start
lighting.
smoking cigarettes again.
Almost like so close.
Almost.
Only if I could do that with the match. That's all I would. That's the only
Yeah.
reason.
But then
But
you're
he's,
saying,
yeah, so
yeah.
he's lighting them for, Keys throughout the movie. And then at the end, when he's trying to light one for himself, he's again lost too much blood, can't get the match lit. And that's during that last little line of, closer than that, Walter. Keys then takes the match and flips it for him to
Yep.
light the smoke. And it's just like, just subtle things like that that are done in movies that you
Beautiful little
just
moment.
beautiful, and you don't, it's very
Eh,
rare in this day and age. And I love a blockbuster. I love a fun movie. Like my weekend, I mean, after this, it'll already have passed out by the time this comes out, but currently my weekends, I'm going to go see Scream 6, and I'm going to go see, like, I'm going to go see, finally
yeah.
see Creed 3. Like, I love
Yep.
a good blockbuster. I love a big thing, but I also love classics where you have these types of moments that are just so, whether you're meant to read into them or not, it's hard not to, because it's just something you I don't know, it's just this beautiful like cherry on top of this the sundae that this movie served up to you.
100%. And, just back to the dialogue, it's so sumptuous, and
Mhm.
there's so much being given to you in every scene, whether it's a sharp quip or an imperative plot point. Here's a dirty secret. I've become a little too, especially watching stuff during the pandemic. I've become a little bit too attached to my phone when I watch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but during this film, uh, I was not on my phone unless I was making a little note about something
Right.
I liked.
And I had to
I'm
pause it because I
pausing
didn't
it.
want to miss anything.
Yes,
I had to
because
pause. Yeah.
I rewound and watched scenes like this. Like I did not want to, and at a certain point, I was like, "Oh, I can't be on my phone for this film, and I don't want to be on
Right.
my phone for this film." And that takes a special movie, to where it's like, "Oh yeah, I don't want to miss this a turn of phrase. I don't want to miss Raymond Chandler's words here." And
Yeah.
yeah, and it rewards you for it.
It really does because there's so much meaning behind everything that's being said. Everything, not that like, and it's weird to say, but like a movie like this, just kind of like how I said too with like the Maltese Falcon, like every moment, every piece of dialogue, every shot, everything is very clearly very intentional. Versus like like movies can have like little throwaway scenes or kind of or what feels like a filler scene or things like that. Everything is done with so much intention and a process behind it that like is very you can't take there's not like a piece of this film that you could take out to like make
Yeah,
it be a little bit shorter. Like you need every single moment and
yeah, it's
every
a
single moment.
tight
Yeah.
107 minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's under 2 hours. And listen, there are a lot of great films that are 3 hours. I'm a fan of The Irishman, but there are so many films nowadays that are just consistently clocking in at 2:30,
Mhm.
like 2 hours and 30 minutes or more. And you know for me, I'm a sometimes less is more. I feel like we
I
don't
agree.
need to make movies so long, and so this movie was tight. I feel like Maltese Falcon even tighter. Maltese
Oh
Falcon is like
yeah.
90 something minutes, I
Yeah,
believe,
it's like
and
right at 90 minutes and it is like
yeah,
boom boom and it doesn't feel rushed. I think that's the most important part. For how
yep,
tight of a movie this is, it can feel very a movie that when you're that tight can feel super rushed. This doesn't feel rushed because the moments where it needs to slow down and take that time and build that suspense, it does it perfectly and then it picks back up. And it just picks back up into the chaos of like two people murdered somebody and now we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. The scene where right after they dump his body on the tracks and they're there
yes,
and she's trying to start the car and it's not turning.
oh
Another
yeah,
little again, learned that when they originally filmed that scene, she turned the car on and they left and that was it. They had like broke for lunch that day or whatever and Wilder went back to his car to go turn it on and it didn't turn over. And he came back on set and was like, we're reshooting this and we're going to do it this way where it's not going to turn. And like kept yelling at McMurray to like turn the car slower. Like it needs to be much slower.
mm-hmm,
And just so you have that, it's some of the most suspense building I've ever seen.
wow,
Like my stomach was in my throat. Like this is how they get caught. They just did all of this, and then this is the moment they get caught.
And we've mentioned Billy Wilder a few times. I think it goes without saying he's one of the great directors in Hollywood history.
Hmm.
There are so many just classics in his filmography. Um, you know, oh, sorry, I just had it up here on IMDb. Yeah, 7 Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe. Some Like
Hmm.
It Hot with Marilyn Monroe. The Apartment with Jack Lemmon. Uh,
Sunset Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, just one of the greats. Sabrina, which you had mentioned
Yes.
earlier.
Oh,
Oh,
that was
Ace
him.
in the Hole. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Ace in the Hole with Kirk Douglas is an
Ooh.
amazing film as well, which is about how sensational the press and the media can be to doing. a story a disservice, like turning like human beings into
Mm-hmm.
fodder for the media machine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I would highly recommend Ace in the Hole. Yeah, Billy Wilder, one of the greats, and The Apartment with Jack Lemmon is
I
fantastic.
love funny story. I love Jack Lemmon. And so the last time we were out in California, visiting my in-laws, and we'd come up to like we had done Disneyland and then did like a night in like Hollywood. We drove
Uh huh.
around to the different cemeteries. So we got to go see where,
Oh yeah.
Jack Lemmon is buried. And I love that his gravestone, all it says is Jack Lemmon in. Like
Wow.
that's what his headstone says. Jack
Oh
Lemmon
man,
in. That's it.
a classic.
Classic,
Jack Lemmon
absolute classic.
in the
Yeah,
ground.
the ground.
For this. Yeah.
I think we definitely have to mention too with this movie again being a classic. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards when it came out. Won none of them. But it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress in a Leading Role for Barbara Stanwyck, Best Director, Best Screenplay. I love that this was a thing back then, was Best Cinematography, black and white, or Best Cinematography color, because you had to differentiate between
Oh
the two.
yeah.
So, so it was nominated for Best Cinematography, Black and White, Best Sound Recording, and Best Music. The score to this film is perfection.
Yes.
Absolute perfection.
Love it. It just uh it augments and adds to everything that's happening,
Mhm.
and it creates tension. Oh,
Mhm.
wonderful.
Absolutely. And then also, as of today, I believe it's number 38 on the AFI 100 films for 100 years list. So, like they're what they consider their top 100 films of all time. It still sits there at number 38. I mean, it's just there's so much good with this movie that it it's again, it's one of those I wish I saw it sooner, but I don't know if I would have had the appreciation for it if I saw it before doing this project.
Yeah, I hear you. Like I had seen it years ago. My father showed it to me, but just getting refreshed like this, I have so much more appreciation for it now, uh,
Mhm.
and uh, and I'm so happy to revisit, especially coming to terms with all of the films or so many of the films that my dad showed me were great, and but
Yeah.
at the time I might have been like, okay, I'd rather watch, whatever, you know,
Teenage
I'd
Mutant
rather
Ninja Turtles: Secret of the
Teenage
Ooze.
Mutant
It's
Ninja
fine.
Turtles or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Um,
yeah, it's
So
so good.
if you had to think of like your top 3 moments in any order, like they don't have to be like 3 of your favorite moments from this movie, what would they be?
Okay, so one that we mentioned was that opening flirtation between
Mhm.
Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck, and it's I'm going to bring it up here for a moment. Uh, yeah, so you mentioned it, and so Phyllis says, "Why don't you drop by tomorrow evening around 8:30? He'll be in then." Who? My husband. You were anxious to talk to him, weren't you? Yeah, I was, but I'm getting over the idea, if you know what I mean. Hey, there's a speed limit in this state, Mr. Neff, 45 miles an hour. How fast was I going, officer? I'd say around 90. Suppose you get down off your motorcycle and give me a ticket. Like they go into this
Just keep
whole
going back.
playful back and forth.
Suppose I let you off with a warning this time.
Yeah.
Suppose it doesn't take. Suppose I have to whack you over the knuckles. Suppose I bust out crying and put my head on your shoulder. And that's when she comes at him with the suppose you try putting it on my husband's shoulder. Goes,
That tears it.
that tears it. And then he walks away. Like just these and I love the repetitive one-liners, like how when he's on the phone with he's in the office and he calls this person Margie. He's saying it's Margie. It's a client. He goes, Bet she what is she? I bet she drinks straight from. She drinks from the bottle or something.
Yeah, she drinks straight from the bottle.
She drinks straight from the bottle. She still
Yeah,
drinks straight from the bottle.
that implying that Fred McMurray is running around with all these quote unquote boozy dames who they're no good. That's not the kind of lady you bring home to mother.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but that scene, it was so, and that's very early in the film, and just establishing that, oh, there's a little something more between these two characters brewing. And the dialogue was just so sharp. It was delivered with such precision. The rhythm of it, it was poetry. It was beautiful to watch. So that scene popped out at me. Secondly, just a scene, and it wasn't even one of the craziest more bombastic scenes in the film, but it stuck with me. It resonated, and like I really took pause because they committed the crime. It seemed like it was the quote unquote perfect crime, but when Fred McMurray left his apartment and he had this unnerving feeling, and he said, I can't even feel my feet while I'm walking.
Yeah.
That anxiety, that was such a precursor, the foreboding of things to come.
Right.
That moment really resonated with me. I don't know. It made me nervous.
It was the walk. He was like, I couldn't wait. He's like, suddenly it came over me that everything would go wrong. It sounds crazy, Keys, but it's true. I couldn't hear my own footsteps. It was the walk of a dead man. And I love too the way that I feel like it gives such key to like the sound, or it may have just been like my Blu-ray and how it was remastered. But whenever there was a voiceover, it was just, the volume was just a little bit higher than like the actual dialogue. So like, it gave you this, so you knew when like that was happening versus him like talking to somebody else. Like it just felt like a little bit of a shift. So
is
like
this the 4K remastered
I think
version?
So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I rented it on Amazon last night.
So yeah, so I don't know if that was like, or it was my DVD, or maybe I was just hearing things and my hearing's terrible and I like popped my ears. I don't know, but it sounded like during like the voiceover versus the dialogue, the voiceover volume was just a little bit higher than the dialogue itself. So like it felt like there was you could get like just a subtle enough distinction of what was where you were at in the story and who was doing what.
Right. And if I was to pick a third, I want to pick it maybe an Edward G. Robinson moment, and maybe I'll steal the one that you mentioned and like echo that, because that's such like, it shows him as such a boss. And like when I think of Edward G. Robinson, I'm not sure if you were a fan of Looney Tunes growing up, and like all the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah.
One of the cool things about Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny and like that whole group, all of those Warner cartoons, they had they would bring up Bogart, Edward G. Robinson, like some of the classic actors from the 40s and 50s in the cartoons, and so many allegories or homages to films and actors of that era. So, man, I want to, either that, I mean, because that was so good, or just when you had, oh, you know what? I'm going to switch it because I don't want to take yours. I realized, okay, because I was racking my brain. The moment where you thought they were out of the woods, and Edward G. Robinson shows up at his goddamn door, and he's got the
broken leg. Yes, that feeling in his chest, because he had accident. Because it really does make sense. He broke his leg. He had accident insurance. Why didn't he submit the claim then? And
exactly.
It makes so much sense.
And then there's the tension of, oh shit, Barbara Stanwyck is on her way up to the apartment. What's going down? So that scene was executed with maximum tension, so well done. And yeah, just that feeling, like they established these things, like the lighting of the match, the
Mm-hmm.
feeling that Edward G. Robinson has, that like there's so much foreboding, there's so much waiting for the other shoe to drop. The tension is at, like, it reaches heights in this film. So yeah, I would say, you ask, you really put me on the spot with a difficult question in a good way, Allison, because there's so much sumptuous
So
material here to
much.
choose from. So I'll pick, yeah, I'll pick that scene at
I
Fred
love
McMurray's
that.
apartment.
No, and again, it comes back to that's where you're getting those lines too. That's straight down the line. You're in the trolley car. It's you and me. Where you guys you can't get off. The people aren't going to get off. And he's using in his conversation, in his comments to Neff. He's like, they're on. It's two people now, and they think it's easier, but it's harder. And
Yep.
they're on the trolley car straight to the end of the line, and the last stop is the cemetery, and like that
Yes.
constantly being repeated in so many different ways.
And it's like, who talks like that? But at the same time, thank you for talking like that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
good.
Yeah, so for me,
Yes.
one of my favorites is that moment of when he's going through the suicide statistics, when he's just putting Norton in his place, and just the way that those lines are delivered and how fast they're delivered. And it just goes to show you like
Boss.
how by the book Keys is, and why he's so good at what he does, and why he's so stressed all the time and stacked up on things, because he sees through all these phony claims as much as he can. Another one that I have is that scene with the car after they dump the body on the tracks, and
Yes.
just her, like, the way that the car's not turning over and she's looking, and you can see, Fred McMurray is getting real nervous, and he just places his hand on hers, and they just do it so slow, because like they gotta get out of there. Like, he has to get to this next part for his alibi so that people can see he's still where he was. I just thought that entire scene was probably the biggest amount of suspense I've had watching that movie. And probably you literally could hear a pin drop, like, with how, like, I don't even think I was breathing myself watching them do that. And then I typically don't ever do this, but in this case, like, I have to pick the ending. Like, right after he tries to get away and he's sitting there, and Walter comes and he comes over and he tells him, you know why you couldn't figure this one out, Keys? Because the guy you were looking for was too close, right across the desk from you. And Keys was like, even like, it shows you like this is killing Keys, what he has to do when he's the way that Edward G. Robinson delivers that closer than that, Walter, like, because when Walter replies, I love you, I love you too. When he says it earlier, he says it in a sarcastic way after Keys says, get out of here before I throw my desk at you. He's like, oh, I love you too, and lights the cigar for him. And then in this part, like, Keys is acknowledging, like, you were like, we were friends. We were close. Like, I can't believe this is something that you would do. And he never would have thought it was. Walter was the top salesman. Like, why would he ever have a reason to do anything like this? And watching him kind of just meet that ending and having that, I just thought this has got to be I thought like the Maltese Falcon was going to be one of my favorite movie endings of all time. I think this one might just edge it out just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, like, you pointed to it coming. It's just beautiful and poetic where it comes full circle, where Edward G. Robinson lights his cigarette for him. That was fantastic. Yeah. You could tell. Yeah, it was hard for them. And their relationship, pardon me. I have
oh, you're good.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold. So
cold. Oh my gosh. Between that and my allergies here in Florida, it's been like, it's a mess.
Right. But yeah, the relationship between these two guys, friends, it's like, it's an unenviable task. Edward G. Robinson does not want to bring his friend to, like, he did not want this to happen. He did not want it to be this guy.
Right.
Maybe it's funny how he was able to evade Edward G. Robinson's just his
Mhm.
masterful awareness in this field. Almost got away with The Perfect Crime. I also thought about choosing The Beginning, just because it's such an iconic trope now, to be like, essentially, there's a dead man talking to you right here. Let me tell you
Right.
what went down. Like, just that, an iconic opening to the film.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I'm also really proud of myself that I made it through this entire episode saying double indemnity right. Because when I was first trying to say it to tell my husband that I was going to be recording this
Right?
episode with this movie, I could not. I was like some sort of wild speech impediment coming up with indemnity. So I practiced it over and over again until like the sound, like when you say a word over and over, that it starts like sounding weird in your head.
Oh yeah,
That's
totally.
exactly what I did with indemnity to make sure that I could say it this many times without screwing up.
That's funny. Yeah, it's not the most common word in the language.
It
I
is
I
not.
hear you.
So with all this being said, I think this is kind of the time where going to Letterboxd and give it my mark that I've watched it and give it my rating out of 5 stars. And I think once again, this there's a reason it's a classic, and there's a reason that between a movie like this and Maltese Falcon, people talk about these two being the films that defines the noir genre. And
Yeah,
for that, it's a 5 star film.
yeah, I would
Five
agree.
stars all around. Can't wait to watch it
And
again.
man, and the performances, Barbara Stanwyck. Now, and this makes me want to watch more Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah.
I think here, I just want to look up her filmography
I
real
think
quick.
this was
But
my first Barbara Stanwyck film, if I'm
yeah,
going to be
she
completely honest.
I've seen other ones in the past, and like, she is like the quintessential, like, a a woman, a dame with real chutzpah, with real moxie. Like, uh what is there's one film in particular that I was looking for here. Um,
It's so
oh,
wild
maybe.
how many movies they were able to put out in a year back during this golden age
Oh,
of Hollywood.
absolutely. Wow.
Like she was in like 4 or 5 movies in 1941. It's wild.
Yep. Well, The Lady Eve is a classic. Obviously, Double Indemnity. Um, The Strange Love of Martha Ivers. Yeah, yeah, she's got a lot, and she was like always like one of the actresses who could really, like, who knew how to, like, really put a guy in his place with a one
Mhm.
liner, like, with a little bit of attitude. Um, yeah, she's fantastic, and the the social roles, like, a man is a man, a woman is a woman, but
Mhm.
that aside, like, she is so good in this movie,
So good.
playing Poison.
Yeah.
She is just bad news. You don't want to get mixed up with her. She's racking up a body count
Mhm.
of, like, of death leaving this wake.
Yep.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's something else.
She's incredible. This was such a fun movie. I am so glad that this was the one that you chose. I cannot wait to watch more new. I'm literally going to end up doing a deep dive and just get as much of this as I can, because I literally, noir is like my new aesthetic. Like I'm here in my black with like I was like I had to go full noir for this recording, because like
Awesome.
this is what I'm going for now. This is a femme fatale in a noir film is
I
my
love
new.
it, Allison. Oh, I'll recommend. Can I recommend a couple real quick
Absolutely, yeah.
of film noir? Asphalt Jungle
Okay.
is an absolute classic, and then one of my favorites, which is a early Stanley Kubrick film, The Killing.
Okay.
The Killing, and both of those films star one of the great film noir actors of the 1950s. Sterling Hayden.
Okay.
Sterling Hayden, who was he was also in The Godfather. He played the police captain or the police commissioner in The
Okay.
Godfather. So,
Awesome.
but those two films, you won't go wrong.
Done. On it. Gonna happen. Well,
Yes.
Hal, before we sign off on here, tell all of my tens of listeners and watchers what you got going on. Where can they find you?
Yeah. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Hal Rudnick. And I do a lot of live streams and I do a lot of movie watch alongs on Twitch. So you can follow me on twitch.tv. Or sorry, twitch.tv/Hal Rudnick. Twitch.tv/Hal Rudnick. And check out Binge Boys with me and the great Lon Harris. Lon Harris has a beautiful mind when it comes to all things movies, TV, and streaming. On Binge Boys, we talk about streaming news, and then we do a few streaming reviews every couple of weeks. That's wherever you find your podcasts. And Allison, I just want to say thank you so much.
Of
And again,
course.
folks, if there's for people watching in the video portion here, I do have a runny nose. So I'm playing hurt tonight,
I
and
love
I
it.
have a little bit of a cold. So pardon at my constant sniffles.
No, well, thank you. You are a trooper for coming through. I really appreciate you being here, Hal. This was so much fun for me. And thank you to all of you as well who are watching here on YouTube or listening on your audio platform of choice. If you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, rate and review as well. If you're listening on audio, hit the thumbs up here. Hit that like button, really helps us with the algorithm, and leave your thoughts on this episode and on Double Indemnity or just film noir in general. Do you have a favorite film noir movie or actor? Let me know in the comments. You can follow the show on Twitter at Reels Like Movies. You can also follow me personally on Twitter at Allison Salamoni. And until next time, my friends, be safe. I got a lot more movies I need to go watch. I'll see ya.
Bye bye.